SQM's 2024 house price predictions. Let's have a look. Good evening, everyone. Florian Heiser here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your stein of coffee and settle down, get comfortable, as we're going to have a look at SQM's predictions for property in 2024 and 4 of their scenarios, everyone. We'll just, before we have a look at this, this is from a tweet that Lewis Christopher shared, and you can get his report, the Boom and Bust report, hashtag not sponsored, but he puts a lot of free property data out there, and it's great to get some insight. So I'm more than happy to draw this to your attention. So let's have a look at these 4 scenarios, and one of them is a 10% crash in one area, and I did include that in the headline because negative news attracts people's attention. That's the reality. So he's got 4 scenarios here, and let me know in the comments. I'll put a live stream, a premiere poll up, which scenario you think is going to be most likely. So scenario 1 is the base case scenario. The cash rate ranges between 4.1 to 5%, so no real decrease in the, maybe a tiny decrease in the cash rate from where we have now. Population growth slows. it slows to 460,000 or less. I had an interesting interaction with someone on Twitter today, because my point was, someone was asking why aren't innovations in technology leading into cheaper houses, and my point was houses have gotten bigger and legislation changes have eaten up any benefits we'd get from that. And he was iterating or making the point that it's all about land, all about land, all about land, because the amount of houses we put out have pretty much stayed the same for the last 20 years. And he's right, they have, in absolute terms. But our population hasn't stayed the same for the last 2 decades. So, you know, we're generating this number of houses. You can't see my hand, right? There it is. This number of houses here, but our population has shot up. So what does that tell you? If we're still pumping out the same number of houses, but we've got millions of more people. So here, our population growth will slow to $460,000. 460,000 people or less. So unemployment will rise to between 4.5 to 5.5%. Okay, and on this scenario, Perth housing will be increasing 5% to 9%. Brisbane, my city, 4% to 8%. Darwin, the first one that's falling, dropping 3 to plus 1%. Melbourne, the same, dropping 3 to plus 1%. Sydney, dropping 4% to flat. Adelaide, flat to plus 3. Hobart, taking a big shave of 7% to 3%. Canberra, -8 to -4. And the capital cities, -1 to plus 3%. So this is the base case scenario that he's played out here. And a lot of these assumptions make a lot of sense. There's nothing drastic here unless you are hoping for less population growth. So scenario 2, an energy crisis. I wonder if that means, he's talking about Middle East oil embargo. I'm thinking just Labor pushing the zero energy agenda. So unemployment the cash rate rises to above 5%. Okay. Unemployment rises above 6%. Inflation reignites back towards 7% following a Middle East oil embargo. Population growth slows back to 460,000 or less. So we'll be hearing maximum doom in the media. You know, people will be freaking. I'll need to get the flames going in the background, like live animating them. You know, alarms going. They're going to be playing this. Imagine the content that will be created if there's oil embargoes. Just imagine. That's, you know, printing money for fear news. Perth, you'll still go from plus 5 to plus 9%. Hang on, let me erase that and get the highlighter. Plus 5 to plus 9%. Brisbane, plus 1 to plus 4%. So we were not growing as much. Darwin, now you're falling 4% to 0%, staying flat. Melbourne, -7 to -3. Sydney, -6 to -2. Adelaide, -3 to +1. Hobart, -9% to -5. And the biggest movement on all of these scenarios is potentially Canberra falling 10%. I mean, what are the civil servants on their $250,000 salaries that are having hunger strikes for 2 weeks and then copping out? What are they going to do if their properties fall 10%? Down to 6%. So we're looking at a capital city average of -3 to 0%. Okay, so that's scenario 2. Let's say that's the Duma Plus scenario. Lots of good content for the US there. Scenario 3 is very strong population growth. So we have scenario 1 plus a strong population growth of 500,000 plus. Oh, I could see that happening. What do you reckon, guys? I mean, you've got to realize Australia is a nice, boring colony on the edge of the planet, providing English lessons, university education, and resources to the rest of the world, and they come here on holiday. It's not a bad place to live. It could be much worse. So we have, and under this scenario, Perth is still 5 to 9. Perth is everywhere. Perth's pretty boring, it looks like. I haven't had the need to visit Perth. I have to find a way to do it. But with so many kids, I'd have to drive across the country. And what was that movie I saw as a teenager? Or was it Wolf Creek? So there's no way I want to go across the desert in Australia. That's ruined it for me, everyone. Anyway, Brisbane. So this is the strongest case for Brisbane, +7 to +11%. Okay, population growth is predicted to be quite high for Brisbane because, I mean, think about it. It's a beautiful climate. You're close to many parts of the world. Not that Sydney and Melbourne are that further away, but the weather in Sydney and Melbourne is much worse. Darwin, -3 to +1%. Melbourne, flat to +3. Sydney, -1 to +3%. Adelaide, +2 to +7%. Hobart, falling 3 to +2. Canberra, -5% to -1%, for a range of +1 to +5%. Okay, so this is the best one for Queensland. We compare here to scenario 1. So for our population growth, so all of this is the same, but they're bringing more people in, which I could see happen. You can see Canberra's up, Hobart's up, Adelaide's up, Sydney's up, Melbourne's up, Darwin's up, Brisbane and Perth are up. And I don't want to discourage people, but I don't see any of the major political parties making serious moves to address migration into Australia. Advocating for that's, frankly, I think, fruitless because there's too many lobby groups that want to maintain the status quo there, and we need to grow as a nation. We're still pretty small. None of you are having kids. Too many people, these young'uns, are not having enough children. So how are they going to pay for all the taxes and luxuries that we love here, all the handouts Australians want? They got to sucker people in. So we need to get increased supply of housing. And that means density. And that means the not in my backyard crowd being disappointed. So let's look at scenario 4. This is the Duma energy crisis plus the strong population growth. Okay, so we're seeing here, again, Perth, nice and boring. Brisbane, 3 to 7. Darwin, -2 to +2. Melbourne, -5 to -1. Sydney, -4 to 0. Adelaide, -2 to +2. Hobart, -8 to -4. Canberra, -9 to -5. We've got a range from -2 to 2%. So here we have the 4 scenarios that SQM are putting forward for their housing bust predictions. And the scariest is potentially Canberra, a 10% move down. Now, you'll notice that none of these movements will take property back to pre-pandemic levels. we're not going to see the big 20% or 40% moves that people are hoping for. How long do you have to sit on the sidelines and hope for that type of correction before the opportunity cost has disappeared? What's the opportunity cost of waiting for that? And would you even be in a position to take advantage of it? So guys, what do you reckon? Which one do you think is the way to go? Which scenario? I think scenario 1, nice and boring, seems quite reasonable. Population growth slowing to 460,000. Well, let's do the outro, guys, and have a bit of a talk, eh? So, thank you all for watching. Let me know your opinions on each of these scenarios in the comments below. Which one do you think is most likely? Or do you think he's off the money? It's going to be a completely different movement. Will housing collapse? Are you waiting for it? Is it all coming crashing down? And how many years do we have to keep hearing? How many years do people keep repeating that until they just face reality, guys? Don't get me wrong, okay? This isn't me saying the lack of affordability of Aussie housing is fair. This isn't me saying that you should invest all your money into it. Never listen to anyone about investing, particularly an architect, guys. We're the shittest investors in the world. Look how many architects are broke, okay? Even the famous ones. What I'm saying is, I've been watching and listening to and reading all the newspaper articles and everything and all the reports put out about housing affordability and how the market's going to crash and all these predictions. And I've become bloody cynical to a lot of it. Because we had a once-in-a-lifetime event. And what happened to housing? It dipped, and then everyone dogpiled in. And even here with rates going up, people are bitching and moaning about stuff being expensive. And what's the dramatic changes they have to do that's getting media coverage in this country of how people are doing it tough and suffering? They have to give up their coffee and start taking packed lunch to the office. We've had a really good in Australia if that is the sacrifices you've got to make. I mean, come on. Oh, wait. And they sometimes have to say no to the kids. Shit. Anyway, thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on this one. Take care, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.